Hello, and welcome to the Dissing My Ability podcast. I am your host, Ken Meeker, certified professional coach and owner of Vitality Career Coaching. Today, I am excited to introduce another fellow coach as my guest. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Marcia Wall. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Ken.
Thank you for coming on to the show and adding your voice to the conversation. I really do appreciate it. Hopefully, you can take a moment and just introduce yourself to the audience, what you do as a coach, and maybe just in a general sense, let them know how you've been personally affected by disability. Of course, anything you disclose is up to you, but just so that they can kind of have a context of how disability has affected you.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm a career coach. I'm certified through the National Career Development Association. I'm also certified as a global career development facilitator. I'm a certified peer recovery coach through Recovery Innovations International. And I've been working for over 20 years, really helping people to realize and exceed their own expectations. I began actually as a kindergarten teacher. I taught kindergarten, both bilingual and trilingual kindergarten for a few years. And then I graduated, so to speak, to teaching writing at the college level at San Diego City College, University of San Diego, as well as the University of New Orleans. What I quickly realized along the way was that I enjoyed motivating people and helping them to reach their goals and counseling them rather than grading papers for a living. That was not my particular joy. And so eventually I found my way into the world of career services, and I started off as an employment specialist at Jewish Family Service, and then eventually worked for Compass Career Counseling, and now for myself. I love what I do. I work with people who have a growth mindset. I work with people in a holistic manner, but in a strategic manner. I help them to find jobs, to get promotions. But really, the majority of my work, Ken, is helping people to develop their professional story and to figure out what they want to do. So certainly I do the strategic and tactical aspect of job searching, but my primary role is in career exploration and helping people to figure out what they want to do next.
That's a fun part of the job, I certainly. I
It's
certainly
my
love that
favorite.
part. Yeah, that part's fun. And with regard to disability, how has it impacted you on a personal level in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to share that. So when I was 27, I was diagnosed with major depression. And to be honest, I didn't think that's what it was. And, a few years later, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder. And that made more sense to me because, as I like to say, in our family, mental illness doesn't run in our family, it stands still. We have many people in our family who deal with bipolar disorder. And initially, it did feel like a disability to me because I had difficulty maintaining employment, kind of having a stable life. But as I went into therapy and was on medications and learned the coping techniques, I've really been able to create a stable lifestyle for me that works well. And part of that is working for myself. And because of that lived experience, I have been able to help other individuals, maybe who have bipolar disorder, anxiety, maybe they have some trauma, as a result of some, traumatic events in their lives. Perhaps they're just depressed because of COVID and
Hmm.
everything that's happened in the last 2 years. But anyone who comes to me with a growth mindset and or a recovery mindset, I feel like I'm uniquely qualified to help them, with their career services. Now, Ken, to be clear, I'm not a therapist. I don't act like a therapist, and I never represent myself as a therapist. However, with that peer coaching certificate from Recovery Innovations International, I do have a unique set of tools that can add to my toolbox when I'm helping people to achieve their career goals. I mean, I think, as you know, careers are a huge factor in our lives. And so when I'm working with people, it's not just about, hey, what job do you want to get? I really work with people to help them imagine the lives they want to create, and then to think about their career choices and how that fits into their life goals so that they can live their best personal and professional lives.
Exactly. You summed that up quite eloquently there. It's sometimes as a career coach and an executive coach, it gets compartmentalized as it's just one aspect of a life. And it's like, no, that my approach to it is very similar to yours. It's okay, what do you want out of life? Now let's find that career. That's the component that's going to afford you that life. And let's make sure that that fits into it in your long-term goals. It's much more holistic as a big picture. And then, you zoom into the career aspect. Another thing that you touched on, with regard to, disability and, being bipolar and depression and stuff like that. I don't think that sometimes there's enough of a conversation that occurs with regard to how intersectionality and how disability plays into that. I think with regard to, bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or any sort of, mental illness, there are those things that are with treatment and with therapy. I've had a lot of it. It saved my life. Depression and those types of things, because there's so much stigma associated with things like depression and mental illness. People are afraid to get help sometimes, or they saw a bad therapist and so they never see one again. How do you approach that subject with people sometimes because it's a touchy subject, because of stigma, because I mean, a lot of misunderstanding out there, I think, in the world about it. How do you breach that topic with people to where there's an honest conversation about it?
Well, I think so. I have a couple thoughts that I will bring up. And first of all, I will tell you that, I didn't know for about 10 years that I have bipolar disorder. And certainly I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong. And I took my sort of failure to thrive after college as a personal fault. I grew up very privileged. I didn't have to pay to go to college. I had every single advantage in the world with supportive parents. And so when my career wasn't taking off and when other areas of my life didn't thrive in the way that I thought they should, I thought it was my fault. And I began to think that maybe there might be some mental health issues. And I looked around at the people in my family and I thought, that's not me. I don't want to be that. And so I just need to work harder. I need to try harder. And I didn't seek help. And so I had that self-stigma for a very long time. And when I work with my clients, if they reveal to me that they're dealing with a mental health issue, then certainly we will address that. And I try to normalize that and, let them know that, hey, almost every single person that comes to me is dealing with some sort of anxiety or depression. And even if not in a clinical way, when you start a career services exploration program, it's destabilizing. Even if you feel super confident, and quite frankly, no one does. Everyone comes to me with some level of that imposter feeling. And that's something that I work on a lot with clients too. But I normalize it and I talk about the steps that people can use to deal with those types of feelings and let them know that progress is progress. And that, we're not striving for perfection. We're not striving for perfection with their career. We're not striving for perfection within this process. And I liken it sometimes to trick-or-treating, that we just need to go out, explore, get the good candy, pass off the bad candy to others, and enjoy the process.
Yeah, I like that a lot, that the Halloween reference. Because, there's somebody out there that likes candy that you don't like. And so let them have it. But you also said something with regard to you feeling like your failure was a personal thing, that something was wrong with you. And, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. And one of the things that she often talks about is the difference between making a mistake and feeling that you are a mistake, or you're a failure versus, you failed at something.
Sure.
And I know, like in my experience with disability and working, because I work within the visual impairment, low vision, blind. I do a lot of work within that space. Something that I've encountered is the self stigma of, or even from other people, well, you can't do that because you're blind, or you can't do that because of this or that. And I think sometimes we attach those labels to ourselves, even if we didn't have them initially.
Sure.
Because we hear it so often. And so we put ourselves in a box, and some of the work that I think is needed is to help people get out of that box, that whether it's society or themselves or whoever's put them in it, to realize that that box is artificial, that it doesn't really exist, that your potential is only limited by the limits that you try to place on yourself. Because everybody has limits, regardless. Like, I say all the time, I'm never going to be a basketball star, because it has nothing to do with my side or anything else. It's just something I'm never going to be good at to that level. So with regard to helping people sort of remove that sense of like that they're flawed because, with depression, which is something I've suffered from for a long time, getting out of that space and that cycle can be a challenge. And so how do you engage with your clients in terms of helping them maybe get out of that cycle? If they're like, well, I've tried that or I've tried that, it's not going to work. And of course, you have a growth mindset with your clients, but that cycle can be debilitating and destabilizing for people sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm a strength-based coach. I believe that we all come with innate strengths. And, when we get education or training, on the job training, right, wherever we learn something, that is a strength as well. We also have personal value strengths. Are you kind? Are you compassionate? We have skill-based strengths, innate, like I'm a communicator. I am a negotiator. I am facilitator. And then people also have specific strengths, like I'm really good at Microsoft Office, or I'm a baker. And then I help people to identify those strengths. I help them to identify their accomplishments and to look at those objectively. And then I also help them to think about what impact that they want to have on in the world, and what their vision is and what their mission is, and how they execute that. And so no matter where somebody is at with a mental health issue, what I do is I just collect the data. I help them to collect the data. We put it on paper, on the screen, whatever, however you want to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And we take a look at the data together, and I help them to say, look, this is what the evidence points to. That doesn't mean that you don't also feel this way sometimes. However, we can look at it objectively and say that that's not true all of the time. And the other thing that I do is help them to look at fact versus feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So people may tell themselves a story. I'm a failure. I don't know how to do this. I'm depressed all the time. And I ask them to take a look and say, is that really a feeling or is that a fact? And I don't tell people not to feel their feelings, because feelings are real.
Yeah.
But what I do, and I don't tell anyone to do anything, Ken, I invite them. So you know what? I really invite you to reflect upon that and say, okay, I'm having this feeling today, but it doesn't have to dictate how I feel about myself, and it doesn't have to dictate what action I'm going to take. And Ken, I think that's really important, because when it comes to career coaching, I believe for the most part, it should be action-based, right? You can reflect, you can explore, but so what? What are you going to do with that information?
Mm-hmm.
And people will tell me all the time, well, I'm going to wait till I feel motivated to do X, Y, Z, or I can't do that today because this is the way I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them, you know what, that's a choice. And if that's what you choose to believe and that's how you want to proceed, by all means, go ahead and do that. An alternative might be, you know what, I don't feel motivated to do this today, or I don't feel my best today, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right. If we wait till we're motivated to go to the gym, it may never happen.
It's never going to happen. Yeah. It's
No.
like you have to, I don't want to say force yourself to do it, but it's that getting over that hump is sometimes just a sheer act of willpower, because it's hard to move through. They're sort of self-imposed obstacles. The way I kind of interact with people when they have that is like, okay, so let's look at both sides. If you don't do it, what's going to happen? If you do it, what's the opportunity? What are you missing out on by not doing it? And then, make a choice. That's sort of how I present it to people. And more often than not, they're looking at things objectively, like, oh, well, if there's an upside to trying, why not try? You already know where you're at.
Ken, and I think that you would agree with me on this. I think, as would really any good career coach, is that people don't have to make huge strides in order to move forward.
So true.
Yeah, I'm all about creating small, achievable goals in a specified timeline, working to achieve those goals. And whatever you get done, whatever a client gets done, is a success. And that's a move forward.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So that motivation doesn't have to be, well, I'm going to go rewrite my resume today. It might mean I'm going to look at 3 resume samples today, and I'm going to see what I learned from that.
Yeah, my entire approach to goals is you have to break it down into steps that are doable, that are manageable, that don't seem so big. I think that's one of the reasons that I work with people separating what is a wish versus a goal. And most New Year's resolutions are wishes. They're not goals because they don't implement any sort of plan. And that's a goal is always something that you can map out and there's no sense of chance left to it. Where it's like, okay, I can make these steps, and while I may not be a millionaire afterwards, I will at least be doing something that will afford me the lifestyle I want, and I will be happy in that career. It should be something that you can achieve, and breaking it down into as many manageable steps, I think, is a big part of that process.
Yeah. So, we talk about goal setting and reaching goals, and I think there's a lot of meaning behind that. I think that can be a really good strategy to help people move forward. What I really focus on, and I'm sure that you do as well, is helping people to understand that goals are aspirational, but
Mhm.
they're not destinations.
Correct. They should not be set in stone.
They should not be set in stone. And I like to talk to people about ongoing curiosity, ongoing learning, networking, having an open mindset, being open to discovering or discovery into serendipity.
Hmm.
Because I know that if my career had gone exactly as I had planned it, I wouldn't be here today. And
Yeah.
where I am today is exactly where I need to be. And so I really talk about the journey, the joyful journey, and helping people. My goal as a career coach is not to help you land the next job. If you do, that's great. And if that's a goal and that's part of it, that's great. But my goal as a coach, or my approach, is very holistic, and there's a long vision to it. So I
Hmm.
invite my clients to think about the fact that the skills they're learning with me today are going to be skills that they can implement over a lifetime, so they can be their own career change agents and not need me again, right?
Exactly. I want to set them up for success so that eventually, so I don't want to have a client for life. I'm happy to if they want to, but that's not the purpose. What, that's not why I became a coach.
I don't think that's I don't think that's what coaching is about. I
I
think
agree.
it's, yeah. And I don't even say it's about empowering people. I believe that people, whether or not they have, what we might call a disability, people already come with their own zone of
Hmm.
genius. They already
Yeah.
come with their power.
Yeah.
As a coach, I just hold a space for them to take a look at that, to reflect upon that, and for them to be able to transform their own lives. And that is what I love. That's what I love to do, and I'm blessed to be able to do it.
Yeah. I know how you feel. Like I don't do the work. The client does the work. That's how I see coaching. It's like they deserve the credit, not me.
Oh, absolutely. My friends will say, "Oh, you helped so and so get a job." I said, "I did. I absolutely did not do that. This is what I did,
Yep.
and this is what the client did." And I think, when circling back to the topic of disability, I think that it's important for anybody, but certainly if someone feels that they have a disability, and especially if they feel limited by that, right?
Hmm.
That can be the power of coaching, is to show them that they have transformed their own lives and that they can go on to achieve great things and have a career over a lifetime that's going to work from them. I know
Absolutely.
that, yeah, before we got on tape, so to speak, right before we started recording this, you and I talked about the fact that some disabilities, some people identify with a disability, and that's okay. But I think for many other people, they may find that society in some way disables them
Hmm.
because society doesn't make accommodations. And making accommodations isn't about doing the right thing or the altruistic thing. It's really about creating a world where everyone can make an impact to their full potential, and we all benefit as a result. And
Absolutely.
I think that's why it's important, why coaching is so important, and to help people to do that so that others can see that, hey, we all have a place, we all have value, we can all make a contribution. And most importantly, it's to everyone's benefit if everyone has the opportunity to succeed.
Absolutely. It's so true. We all benefit from greater accessibility. Everyone benefits. I talked about that on one of my last shows. We were talking about we all get older as we age, and Wheelchair ramps benefit me as somebody with a visual impairment. I'd rather take a ramp than stairs. It's safer for me, even though I'm not in a wheelchair. Creating those spaces for everybody, everyone benefits. Whether it's specifically for them or not, creating a more inclusive world where they have access is so important because we all are important. Everybody's important. We all matter. And removing barriers in whatever way possible I see it as something that is my part of my mission in life is to empower or create a space so that everybody feels like they belong. And so
Yeah, I would agree with you. I feel like that's part of my mission too. And again, I just want to reiterate that when everybody has a chance to succeed, we all benefit, right?
Yep, yep.
If you know, and not just because we can all use this ramp or, this feature is going to help someone else, but when people contribute,
Yeah.
right? And literally contribute, right? Means like tributary, right? Like
Yeah.
with you're going with the flow. Everyone's part of the flow. We can only be enriched when everybody has an opportunity to be their best selves.
Absolutely. And the data supports that too. And that's something that within the DEI space that I work in, the metrics that the data supports, the more inclusive an organization is, the better they perform financially. They have better retention. They have better ideas. They're more innovative, but the data supports it. So it's absolutely correct. One thing I wanted to ask you about is something I want to circle back to, sort of overcoming challenges. And you said something on the questionnaire that I sent you earlier about how important it is to let the small stuff go. And that stuck out to me because I could not agree more with that statement. Baggage is something that holds people back a lot. I know it held me back. It's one of the reasons I'm a huge advocate for therapy is because it helps you to sort of sort that stuff out. I'm hoping that you could sort of touch on that subject about why it's so important to let the small stuff go and how you engage with that from a coaching sort of standpoint for what you do.
Well, Ken, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm not sure exactly what I meant by that when I wrote that to you at a different time. So, but I will say that I think it's important to focus on larger goals and focus on really, quite frankly, our happiness, and not in a selfish way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we are living our best lives, then we're contributing best to society, and society benefits as a whole. I know in the past, if something wouldn't go my way, or I felt like I had failed at work, or that I had made a mistake, I might focus on that. And when I look over a lifetime, I realize I don't even remember most of those instances. And so what's the point in focusing on those? That's just going to hold us back. And I think it's important to think forwardly, to celebrate strengths, and one of those strengths, right, is to focus on how we can cope and navigate and adapt.
Yep.
And I think if we're doing that, then we're going to be able to move forward. And that is what I think what we want to do in careers. That's what we want to do in life. And I think that is the purpose of coaching. So focus on the positive. And that doesn't mean that you have to be Pollyannish about challenges. Those can be real, but don't let those hold you back. Life is short. Move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like toxic positivity, like acknowledge the stuff that's there because it's real, but don't let it consume you. All right, it's there. Yep, that happened. Moving on.
Moving on. Moving on.
Because it happened, you can't change it. So there's no point in dwelling on it. Just, all right, it happened. Let's move forward. Let's learn something and move forward.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned toxic positivity, and I'll let you explain what that is. But I would say it's okay to grieve for things, grieve for what might have been, grieve for whatever you feel a loss of, and then let that go.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Let it go and move forward.
Absolutely. Toxic positivity is sort of negating anything that's bad, that it's not really there, and just kind of it can manifest itself in both ways where it's like, oh, look at the bright side. Well, sometimes, if you're and it's what I think toxic positivity is so damaging to people that are clinically depressed, because it just makes it sort of makes them feel not seen. Because if somebody's clinically depressed, I don't want to say nails on a chalkboard because it's worse than that, but it just grinds you because you can't see that it's just, it's awful. I think if there's a book that I read many years ago called Emotional Resilience, by David Biscott. It's a profound book, and it's really just about how to and how important it is to reconcile all the stuff that has happened in your life because it happened, it's real. And the way to move forward is to acknowledge it. Yep, it's there, it happened, but it doesn't have to continue to, especially with trauma, it doesn't have to continue to cause damage to me. I can acknowledge it and I can move forward. I don't have to sit and let it keep damaging me as I move through life. And I think that's so critically important to do that.
Well, and I'm glad you bring that up, right? I think it gets to definition. Am I going to let things define me, or am I going to let those things inform who I am?
Yeah.
And I think that's particularly important for, talking about disability, people who think they have a disability, identify with a disability, have a disability, am I going to let this define me? Or is it going to be a part of my story?
That's so
And
important.
again, I'm not saying that you have to deny how you feel or deny a reality, but at the same time, I think we're all multifaceted human beings with multiple different types of identities and experiences, and who we are is a sum of those things. And I don't think that we're defined by any one of those things.
I wholeheartedly agree. You're talking about intersectionality right there. We are all the things each of us is. And oftentimes, in a previous show, I think it was with my friend Dr. Martin Mendelsohn, we have a tendency, I think, in our culture here in the States to identify with our jobs often, like, oh, so what do you do? Oh, I'm this. But we're not just our careers. We're not just one aspect. We're not just living with a disability or whatever it might be. I'm not just visually, low vision. I am a lot of things. And I think it's very important to be a whole person. And within the employment space and the career space, people need to be able to show up as their full authentic selves. I think that's critically important. And the more we can move in that direction, I think the better off we all will be, and happier and more productive, all of it. I think it's a critically important aspect to look at the whole person, not just part of the person.
I think you nailed it on the head when you said happy and productive. We can be both.
Yep.
And by we, I mean everybody. And I hope that
Yeah.
that is ultimately the work of career services, that we can produce, right? We can contribute in a way that we were born to do, and that we can also have a happiness and a joy about it. And again, that doesn't mean that it's all about me and everything has to be my way and that I have to feel 100% positive about it every day. But I think when we are living our life's purpose, then we're going to find joy in that. And that joy empowers us to bring joy to other people's lives. And I can't imagine anything greater than love and joy.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I cannot think of a better place to end as on that because that's perfect, and that sums up why I think you and I do the work we do.
Absolutely.
And so I want to thank you so much, Marcia Wall, for coming on and being my guest today and having this awesome conversation. Can you share with the audience where they can find you if they'd like to connect with you?
Sure. The easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn, and my name is MarciaWall. Simply, if you type Marcia Wall Career Coach into Google, I'm going to pop up and you're going to find me. And once you're there, please feel free to connect with me. Feel free to subscribe to my newsletter, Joyful Journeys, where I tell stories. Actually, clients tell their own stories of ongoing career success and happiness. And once you're connected with me, you're going to hear about the webinars that I do, more podcasts like this that I'm doing. And I want to hear from you too. Connect, follow, but let me know about you and how I can be of service.
Awesome. And there'll be a link in the description for people to follow as well. Again, thank you so much for coming on and being my guest, Marcia. I really do appreciate it. This has been the Dissing My Ability podcast. I am your host, Ken Meeker, certified professional coach and owner of Vitality Career Coaching. Please remember to subscribe, share, and like the podcast. And as always, remember to be kind to others and to yourself. Thank you for tuning in.